And now, okay, maybe we should just go up there. Yeah, we'll go up there. And our gathering is on okay, yeah, Jeff, if you
Don't be afraid of some change. Don't be afraid of some change. Today will be a joyful day, and to rejoice and come in. And to rejoice and come in. And to rejoice and come in. Today will be a joyful day, and to rejoice and come in.
This is the day which we have been given. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Good morning, everyone. My name is Oscar Sinclair. My pronouns are he, him. I serve Unity Church as your senior minister. I'm joined in the chancel this morning by our worship associate, Betsy Hearn. It is so good to be together. If this is your very first time at Unity, welcome. It is so good that you are here. If this is your 500th time at Unity, welcome. It is so good that you are here. If you've come online, welcome. We're glad you're here. If you've come to be spiritually nourished or you've come not sure what it is that you're looking for, we hope that you find it here. Whoever you are, whatever brings you to this place, wherever you are heading next, know that in this place, the fullness of who you are, your gifts and your wounds, are welcome. We hope that you find Unity Church to be a place that helps you find and keep your balance, a community that inspires you to lead a loving life of integrity, service, and joy. I do want to extend a special welcome to those of you who are visiting us this morning. If you would be so kind, if you are here in the sanctuary, to fill out a visitor card in front of you in the pew and put it in the offering plate when it passes by, we will know who you are and what brought you here. If you're joining us online, please send us an email. Tell us who you are and what brought you here. We would love to hear. After the service this morning, Finding Yourself at Unity will meet in the center room right behind me. The topic this morning is on worship and the liturgical year. One programming note for this morning. As you came in, you got one of these. Everybody got one of these? Okay. Confession time. There is no written sermon today. The theme for January is resolution and improvisation, and one of the things that makes improvisation possible is that it is co-created. So we're going to try an exercise this morning as part of worship that I used to do once a year at the congregation that I served in Nebraska, called a question box sermon. Some people know what that is and are already laughing. I can see you. But here's how it's going to work. In the next 5 minutes before the first hymn that we sing together, I want you to take your card and write down on it a question that you've always wondered about being asked in this pulpit. Something that you would love to hear about in the context of a worship service at Unity Church-Unitarian. Then, as we sing our first hymn together, the ushers will come forward with the offering baskets and everybody will put their cards in the offering baskets. I'll take those cards, put together the outline of a sermon, and that's what we'll preach. And we'll see how it goes. There's more to say there. A couple things. There are a lot of people here, and so we will probably not get through 200 questions in a single sitting. We will try and keep it to a regular hour-long worship service. But one of the reasons that we do this is because it tells us what are the questions driving the curiosity of the congregation. So even if your question doesn't get answered today, know that we use this as a resource going forward as we plan out worship services for the next year. I'm really excited. These were often my favorite services to do. It's a chance to really engage with the congregation in the moment and to do so in a way that leans into the improvisational piece of this month. All right, so that's your homework for the next 5 minutes. As we light the chalice, as we hear one more song from the kids, think of a question, write it down, be ready to pass it forward. Good? Repeat the question. You have one of these. Write down a question that you would like to see a minister answer from the chancel of Unity Church, and then pass it forward during the opening hymn. All right. Let us now enter into worship with the ringing of our bell.
What if everything always went according to plan? At first, we might accomplish more of what we think we need to accomplish. It may seem less stressful at first, being able to anticipate what happens next. But after a certain amount of time, and that amount would vary person to person, the once comfortable predictability would become less comfortable, and, well, boring. If we always know what happens next, we lose the joy of surprise, serendipitous experiences, and the excitement that comes from anticipating the unknown. Friends, let us gather with open, curious hearts, ready to explore the unpredictable, learn from its wisdom, and embrace its beauty. This opening was written by Krista Flanagan for a question box sermon, in which the sermon consists of the preacher answering questions submitted during the service. Please join me in saying our words for lighting the chalice. We light this chalice as a symbol of our faith, the light of truth, and the warmth of love.
Our opening hymn is number 126. As we sing it, the ushers will bring forward plates. If you would put your questions in those plates.
Each time we gather for worship, we set aside a moment to expand the caring ministry of this congregation. Together, we recognize the cycle of life and death, the circle of love, compassion, and witness that is at the center of this and every sacred community. In our community today, we are delighted to celebrate with Mary Ashmore, who says she has been given a clean bill of health following treatment for breast cancer. Yeah. Mary is grateful for the healing love and caring support of her Unity community through this journey. We congratulate and celebrate with Theo Cledwin, grandson of Ted and Ona Lenz, and son of Lloyd Cledwin Lenz and Sarah Cledwin. Theo has his Eagle Scout Court of Honor on January 26th at 2:30. I think that's today. Yeah. All are welcome at Northern Star Base Camp. And yet another celebration. We are overjoyed to announce that Sam Crosby Schmidt, who was raised in this church, and their partner Riley Granger were married last Monday, surrounded by close friends in a snowy Boston park. Yeah. Sam's parents, Kathy and Chris Crosby Schmidt, and sister Jane, are thrilled that Riley is now officially part of the family. We stand at the side of all those whose primary spiritual practice is caring for children, with those who live with grief or chronic pain, with illnesses seen and unseen, with mental illness or addiction. We pray for our neighbors in prison, those who care for family members in ill health, those who are struggling to stay afloat amidst poverty. Our lives are blessed by those who knowingly and with curiosity and courage face their final days, and by those who rise above heartbreak to carry on the work of ending oppression in all its forms. We celebrate with all who come through these doors with joy in their hearts, celebrating anniversaries, birthdays, a really good cup of coffee this morning, because this is a house of joy, and laughter is the sound of a thriving community. We pray for those in harm's way, for the wisdom and strength of the leaders of the world, and for the leaders of this beloved congregation, as together we live into our future. We now join together in praying for the joys and sorrows you bring this day. Please speak into this shared silence the names of those who you are holding this morning. For all these names, and for names not spoken aloud but held deep in the heart, we now join in a time of shared silence. We lift up those who fear that their hurts, their pains, are too insignificant for healing. May they know that their hurt and their pain is valid, no matter the size, and may they feel comforted in the knowledge that they are not alone and that they are loved.
There are a lot of cards here. So Unity Church is framed by statements of conscience, known as our end statements. And one of those is this: that we will sustain and steward the church and our larger Unitarian Universalist movement for the future. Our movement exists beyond the walls of this church to partners with whom we share a common interest. Each week, the larger portion of our offering goes to these community partners. This week, the larger portion of our offering goes to Ujama Place. Ujama Place is a service organization housed just a few blocks from Unity Church, providing holistic, culturally responsive transformation for young African American men experiencing inequity at the intersection of race and poverty. Each man has an individual plan and works with trained coaches to achieve stable housing, increase educational attainment, secure and retain employment, reconnect with family, and eliminate contact with the criminal justice system. This collection will help underwrite the monthly training expenses for Ujama men. Will the ushers please come forward? May the work of our hands and the generosity of our hearts be given in gratitude this day. Let the offering now be taken.
Delicious Ambiguity by Marisol Caballero. I wanted a perfect ending. Now I've learned the hard way that some poems don't rhyme, and some stories don't have a clear beginning, middle, and end. Life is about not knowing, having to change, taking the moment and making the best of it, without knowing what's going to happen next. Delicious Ambiguity. Gilda Radner. How is it that I, a minister and known skeptic, am able to A, not run around screaming that the sky is falling, and B, do my job at all? This question perplexes those belonging to religious traditions that offer comfort in the form of certainty. For some, answers to life's toughest questions offer reassurance that there is order in this chaotic world and in our sometimes chaotic lives. For others, such as myself, the great mystery does not cause panic, but instead eases my mind, reminding me that I don't have to understand or know everything, that we are all just feeling our way through this life together. No one is an expert, which for those who expect a minister to be an expert at all things crucial and who look to clergy to get them through the most difficult days of their lives with reassuring certainties, I would definitely not be the one to call on. As a chaplain, I once had a patient who was dying. Though he was unable to speak, he would communicate by writing on a legal pad. He told me that he was afraid. I asked him what he was afraid of, and he wrote, "I've never done it before." This patient was deeply Catholic, yet I knew him well enough to understand that his honesty about the unknown was more a request to witness the reality of his anxiety about the unknown, rather than to disabuse him of it. Questions of the hereafter have always struck me as the easiest to enjoy for their ambiguity. It's almost as if I don't want any spoilers on the surprise adventure that awaits me after I die. Lately, however, it seems that so much of our living world, the here and now, is more topsy-turvy than usual. It's a human spiritual need to want to make sense of the events of our lives. We not only want, but need life's unexpected changes to have a deeper meaning. If not a perfect ending, or poems that rhyme, we would at least appreciate a clear beginning, middle, and end every once in a while. It's much harder to treat daily ambiguities as adventures we should face with excitement, especially as big changes seem to have a way of raining down all at once. The longer I live, the more I am taught the same lesson over and over by wildly different circumstances. The more I expect the unexpected, the more I roll with the punches of life's tragedies and revel in life's joys and victories. The more I give in to the reality that I am not as in charge of and cannot plan as much of this life as I would like, the more I can fully experience and even come to enjoy the deliciousness of my journey's ambiguity. Giver of life, help me to approach this moment, this day, this week, month, this year, this life as an adventure whose ending I do not yet know. Allow me to embrace each plot twist without self-blame or despair, but with innocent wonder. May each change be savored and each accompanying emotion be fully felt, that I may fully live.
Question 1. What am I doing here? Well, you're here at a Unitarian church on a Sunday morning, which means a couple things. It means that in the midst of a cold and dark season, you've woken up and decided to come be with other people. You've decided to sing songs with them. You've decided to make eye contact. You've decided to spend some amount of time listening to somebody you may not know very well tell you things that he has not well prepped. You've done that because that's how we get through cold and dark seasons, both January and perhaps 2025. That's what we're doing here as a start. We come here to be with each other. Everything else pretty much is commentary on that. Question 2. Why does it matter what I believe or don't? There's a glib answer that is, of course, it doesn't. Unitarian Universalism does not have a creed. We don't have a set code of beliefs, things that you must abide by in order to be Unitarian Universalist. But I would say that a belief deeply held in the context of a church is a thing that compels you to action. So why does it matter what I believe? It matters what you believe because the things that you believe are the things that drive you to act in the world, both for positive and negative ways. If you believe, for instance, that humans are inherently selfish and that self-interest is the driving force in human society, then you are more likely to act in the world through your own self-interest and assume that of other people. If, on the other hand, you believe that humans are at our best when we cooperate, then that informs how you approach each other. That's a really big example, but you can drill down as deep as you want on that into what you believe about parenting, what you believe about friendship, what you believe about the right way to cook eggs. All of those things have consequences in the real world. So it's not simply that we just have these beliefs that sort of float up in our heads and never actually interact with the world. They do all the time. Similarly, question 3, do we really have no creed? Or are we simply so wedded to the idea of being a liberal church that we're leery of putting ourselves in a box or of looking as though we're in a box? So for important historical reasons, Unitarian Universalism has no creed. We've emphasized being a pluralistic faith. We have no set thing, that this is all what Unitarian Universalists believe. But one of the things that we ask all our coming-of-age students to do, and one of the things that we really should ask all our adults to do as well, is to be able to articulate what is your own credo, what is your own understanding of how the world works. A day or two ago, a friend of mine, Rabbi Rachel Barenblatt, she serves in the Northeast, published a prose poem entitled A Partial List, which is itself a kind of creed. It goes like this. I believe the days are getting longer. I believe this nation can become the land of promise my mother understood it to be. I believe we have obligations to each other. I believe every human being is made in the divine image. I believe in science. I believe fundamentalism damages the spirit. I believe truth matters. I believe everyone should be ethical. I believe hope is a discipline. I believe what I see with my own eyes. I believe vaccines work. I believe we shall overcome someday. I believe life is always better with music. I believe we are stronger together than we are apart. I believe a better world is possible. I believe as a Jew I am obligated to love the stranger. I believe there is more than enough to go around. I believe it takes work not to swing at every pitch in the dirt. I believe I would be a terrible baseball player. I believe no race or gender is superior. I believe that there are more things in heaven and earth that are dreamt in my philosophy. I believe healing the world is everyone's responsibility. I believe it's the government's job to care for machines. I believe human beings are a meaning-making machines. I believe Star Wars Episode 4 is the best of the bunch. I believe humanity can be better than we have been. I believe that spring will come. I believe that love matters. I believe it is not incumbent on me to finish the work. I believe I am enjoined to begin anyway. That will never be written as a Unitarian Universalist creed. But it is a project that each of us can do to create a statement of, here are the things that I hold so deep that they compel my action in the world. When you're in front of the congregation, do you see who's in attendance? Or glance all around and take in the whole crowd? We're all looking at you. Similar question, can you tell from our faces whether we're listening or not? It's one of the wonderful things of this job. I mean, right, so theoretically, yes, you can look out from this pulpit and say, I know so-and-so hasn't been here in a couple weeks, and I don't see them now. But we hardly ever do that. Most good preachers that I know, you can watch this happen. We'll get caught in a moment where we're not sure what the right thing to say is, or we're lost and this point that we're trying to make isn't working, and we'll pause and just look out. And I tell this to people I'm teaching preaching to. Just look out and recognize that there are hundreds of people in this moment wishing you well. And that can carry you through just about anything. Worship is a collaborative thing, and the ability to look out and feel this group of people sending energy back is quite a thing. As you might be able to tell, I'm not 100% well at the moment. I've spent the last 2 days with a nasty cold, and I was stumbling into church this morning, but standing here, looking out, is oddly energizing, seeing all of these faces, all of these people who I've gotten to know in the last 6 months who I haven't got to know yet. It is a beautiful thing. To what extent do you allow the current news to inform your sermons? Do you think it should or should not? As you might imagine, there were a lot of questions about the current state of the world. There's it's an old description. It's attributed to just about every major 19th century preacher that I've ever heard apparently said some version of this, which is that you should preach with the Bible in one hand and the newspaper in the other. I think there's some truth to that. Of course, sermons, worship are a reaction to the world that they exist in. We exist in context. The moment that what we do here on Sunday morning has nothing to do with what's going on out in the world, we've become meaningless. To go back to the first question, what am I doing here? I don't know what we're doing here if we don't have any relationship to what's going on outside our walls. It's also true that we are not wholly responding to what's outside our walls. Because as a religious institution, we're trying to grasp at truths that transcend the current moment. We're trying to say, what is the relationship between the world as it ought to be and the world as it is? That requires an understanding of the world as it is, but it doesn't dwell there. It sees it, it critiques it, and it moves out of it. So the hope is that we are always speaking to the world as it is out there. And we're doing it as a religious institution. So a sermon is not a political speech, right? To take a very concrete example, starting next week, we have a month-long sermon series on truth and lies. Now, it does not take a deep jump to see how that sermon series may, perhaps, have been influenced by some, perhaps, things going on in the broader world. And the question of how we navigate truth, how we understand what truth is, what lies are, and how we distinguish them is not simply a question of the current political moment. It speaks to the current political moment, but it also goes beyond it. Out of order. How does silence, expectant waiting inform your own spiritual practice? How do we find quiet in our noisy, saturated world? There's a great Barbara Peskin poem. If this wasn't totally improvised, I'd have it. But it starts with the silence of a sanctuary in worship when nothing is being said. The sound of pews creaking, coughs in the back. The silence that is not absence but presence of a couple hundred people in a room sharing attention. There's something very holy in that moment. How do we find it in our noisy, saturated world? We come here. For me, we come here. For me personally, there are places like this where I go that I'm not working so that I can have that experience of being together with other people in silence, so that I can be in community without having to run the script in my head over and over. There were a surprising number of practical questions. What do you do in days that are not worship service days? So my week looks like this. I preach on Sunday. Monday is my day off. I actually try and take that as a day off. I usually go grocery shopping or run some kind of errand. On Tuesday, I come in and have a big meeting day. The first thing is a 3-hour-long executive team meeting here at church. That's followed by a couple other individual meetings, usually 1 or 2 with congregants. Wednesday is the staff meeting here, as well as more one-on-one meetings with folks that I supervise. Thursday is usually meeting with congregants. Friday is at home. It's a writing day. And then Saturday, about once a month, I'm at home. Otherwise, I'm here for an event. So, sermon, the next question, what is your process like for developing sermons? How do you decide the theme? The sermon writing actually happens throughout that time period. I usually know more or less what I'm preaching about a month out. And for instance, right now, I know the topics for each of the February sermons. I have an outline written for 2 weeks from today. I have half a manuscript written for a week from today, and we'll be continually adding on to them as we get closer. What called you? You did. Unitarian Universalist ministers are called out from among the congregations that they serve. That's the piece of liturgy from the Service of the Living tradition that happens every year at General Assembly. We call out from among you, and then they go through the role of newly minted ministers. The thing that makes ministry in our denomination the thing that holds me in this denomination is that I can have a sense of call. I can believe that I was called by the divine, and I can articulate that beautifully, but the thing that confirms it is the vote of a congregation. So I was ordained by the Unitarian Church of Lincoln. I was called by this congregation. I will be installed by this congregation. That is wholly up to any congregation. That's how we navigate who speaks from this pulpit, who leads our churches. The body that's able to do that is the gathered. All right, I have too many questions here. There were a couple questions in this vein. How do UU principles relate to those of other major non-Christian religions, i.e. Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism? And then how do you address all the individual assumptions of what God is or can be in our congregations? So one of the things that we think about a lot in worship is balancing two important pieces of our tradition. One is the pluralistic tradition that draws from many, many voices. That's where we get sermons on solstice, sermons on Buddhism, sermons on Hanukkah. But the thing that's balanced against always is how do we do that in an accountable way that is in relationship? One of the things that's really important as you're leading congregations is that you don't lead as a spiritual tourist. Right? I could not get up here and preach on the Holy Quran. I am not in deep relationship with that text or that tradition. And so it would be hollow. It would not be doing honor to the text that I would want to. And so one of the ways you get through that is by inviting a whole host of voices to speak and not depending on any one person. So any Unitarian Universalist minister is going to have particular sources of authority, particular traditions that they are most comfortable with. And the hope is that you continually invite in so that you generate a variety of voices that represent the congregation as a whole. I have never done a question box sermon without this next question. Do you believe in an afterlife? If so, what does it look like? It's so interesting because nobody ever asks. That's not true. In 10 years of ministry, I think I've had one person ask that question out loud. And every time we solicit questions in this format, it's always there. Which means that it's a question that we're all thinking about. I don't know is the most honest answer. Do I believe in an afterlife? I hope so. If so, what does it look like? I hope to find out. But it is the thing that we don't know. Well, a couple weeks ago, I quoted Corinthians in a sermon. The Apostle Paul says, but now we see through a glass darkly, then we shall see face to face. Right? He's talking about death. But what he's saying is, in this life, we only see but through a glass darkly. Glass, in that sense, is a mirror. In this life, we only see dimly in a mirror. Only then, only after we die, will we see what's behind the mirror. So I don't know. I hope to know someday. I think it's the last great adventure many of us take. But I don't know that there is a way to know for sure here, now, what that will be. The undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveler returns, I think is the Shakespeare quote. There we go. This one was listed low priority, but it's a fun question. Why does the Unitarian Church find the need to rewrite tunes of old familiar Christian-adapted hymns? This is timely, actually, because there is a new hymnal coming out in June. So the first thing that I would say is that we are not unique in this. Every denomination rewrites hymns. It is a long and glorious tradition. It's an attempt to take the familiar and make them fit closer to our theology. And sometimes it's impossible, and those hymns we have often let go. Sometimes we try with mixed success. You can see this most often at Christmas. So for instance, if you hypothetically opened up the gray hymnal and tried to turn to O Come All Ye Faithful, you would see that it's not called that in our hymnal. It's called Adeste Fidelius, because we've taken the parts that are particularly theologically challenging for Unitarians and put them into Latin. And thus, by singing them, we will better be able to let go of the theology of the words. But there are really good reasons to do this, right? There are good ways to say, this hymn is beloved. It doesn't quite say what we want it to say. And so how can we change it to deepen our understanding of what the meaning is? And a couple years ago, Jason Shelton, a UU minister and composer, had written this song called Standing on the Side of Love. You've probably heard this story. Great song. Comes from a story from the mid-'90s about the marriage equality fight. Somebody called the UUA headquarters, and the UUA president at that time picked up the phone and said, do you have any comment on the proposed Massachusetts law defining marriage as between a man and a woman? The UUA president said, my comment is that we stand on the side of love. Click. Jason Shelton happened to be in the room, coincidentally, when that phone call happened, and he wrote this hymn based on that moment. That hymn became an anthem for the marriage equality fight. And then a couple years ago, as disability rights became a really central piece of who we are, some disability rights activists said, well, how do we understand ourselves in this? Is there a way that we can understand this song differently? And so Jason Shelton rewrote the lyrics to Answering the Call of Love, which tracks in the exact same way as the hymn is written, and also works because the UUA president was answering the phone in that moment. The story works in the same way, and it broadens who's included in the story. So there are good reasons to do that, and there are some head scratchers. But we'll take those up at a different day. How can we let you be both a parent and a minister? Just bear with us. I probably said this in candidating, but it's worth saying again right now. Ministers sign up for everything that comes with this job, for being in public, for having the lines between their personal lives and their professional lives a little fuzzy at times. Our spouses and our kids don't sign up for that. They're sort of assumed to be that. And so the biggest thing is just bear with us. Like, let our kid be a kid. And we will try to do our best by her and the church. A couple more questions, and then we'll wrap up. Is there absolute truth? Come next week. Actually, no, two things. Come next week, and when you walk out there, you'll see a vase with a bunch of blue marbles in it, and a sign next to it that says, "Guess how many marbles are in the vase." Take a guess, write it down, put it in the basket. This will inform our answer of, is there absolute truth, next week in a worship service. Most of the questions that we got were some variation on this last one. How can we, as Unitarian Universalists, resist and overcome and influence the culture of cruelty and lies and everything that is contrary to our principles as a religious community and a denomination? Why is it okay to lie and be cruel? Why are we, as Americans, accepting this? Our church is a prophetic tradition. This came up in a new member class a little while ago. What does it mean to talk about prophecy in Unitarian Universalism? It's not fortune telling. It's not saying, oh, I know exactly how things will turn out. That doesn't work. Certainly not going to work today. Nobody knows how this is going to turn out. What the prophetic tradition is instead is standing in the midst of a historical moment and pointing at the world as it is and at the world as it ought to be and observing the chasm between the two of them. That's the role of the church in moments like these. It's what Martin Luther King meant when he said that the church is not the state. The church is the conscience of the state. The church is the body that points out the gap between those two things, that says other people can figure out the policy, but what we can say is that this is not right. This is not who we want to be. This is not the community that we want to build. And so we will keep pointing that out and keep drawing attention to it. What does bravery in the face of fear look like to you? Especially in the times when the broader culture seeks to other? Doing that. Because the broader culture does not always want folks to point to the gap between how it is and how it ought to be. Inertia is a powerful thing. It is so easy, right, to say, oh, this is just the thing, this is just the way things are. This is how they've always been. It's easy to be cynical. It takes an enormous amount of bravery and hope and capacity for wonder to say, there is another world that might be, and we are going to keep pointing our way towards it. And in order to do that, as a minister, what is something you've had to learn over and over again? In order to do that, you have to go back to the first question. Why am I here? We do that because we come here. That's how we get brave. That's how we get to articulate the gap between is and ought. That's how we generate our courage to go out into the world and say, no, 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 no. This is not right. That's how we do it. Every time we show up here. And every time you send up 200 questions. May we always keep asking questions. Amen, and blessed be. Now, there is no closing hymn listed because this is the other improvisational part. So, what are we singing?
Good morning, everyone. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Ahmed Ansaldu. I'm Director of Music Ministries here at the church. And yeah, when you choose a closing hymn, typically you talk with the minister and figure out where the sermon is going or where it's going to end up and what the mood of the room is. And as I heard all the questions, one hymn kept coming back to me. Now I'll say this. There were several safe options. You know, I could all just have you sing Spirit of Life, go home. And there will be no emails waiting for me in my office. But I think this is the right one for several reasons, which I will tell you. So I will start by asking you to turn to hymn 200, get all your groans out, you know, groan as much as you want. And then I'll let you know why I picked hymn 200. Oh. That's in our hymnal? Why is that in our hymnal? Okay, well, you know, Martin Luther, lots of things about him. And we can talk all day about anti-Semitism and German nationalism, but a few things. First of all, I have a problem with this church and how ministers do things, so I'm going to write a list of 95 points and mail it to everyone asking for discussion. Is there something more Unitarian than that, first of all? But here's the thing. The questions I heard, and a lot of the talk, even the one about, like, why do we rewrite all hymns, old hymns, you know, there's this underlying sense of, I am weak, I am scared, I don't know what to do. Do I have a credo? What am I doing here? I grew up in a Catholic household with very faithful grandparents. And they found such a source of strength and resilience in singing and speaking the rosary every morning. I know folks that might have, you know, grown up in the Lutheran tradition. And something that I don't hear as much is faith as a source of strength, as a source of as a mighty fortress, as a bulwark that never fails. As many of you might know, I am a Mexican Arab immigrant. I'm not a resident. I'm still navigating an immigration process that frankly seems to be crumbling right now. I'm also parent of a trans girl. I have a Palestinian grandfather. And I think that in the coming months, I will probably need to find some people or communities to lean on, to ask for shelter, perhaps literal, perhaps metaphorical. And when I do that, I will be asking, are your values, is your faith, is your truth, is your love a mighty fortress? Is it a bulwark that never fails? Or are you a cardboard box? Are you a bouncy castle? Are you not going to be that? So let's sing A Mighty Fortress. Here we go.
So why do we come here? To be part of a mighty fortress, perhaps to be with each other, for sure. To ask questions, absolutely. Don't stop asking questions. Keep doing that. And keep figuring out how we will build this place together. Go in peace, and amen. One quick programming note. I am not going to be shaking hands in the receiving line because I don't want to be patient zero for the whole congregation. So give me a moment to get a mask on out there, and have a good day.